Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Safety. I'm your host, Dylan Sutherland from Protector Safety Gear. Throughout this series, we'll be interviewing industry experts to provide our audience with valuable insights on various categories of PPE. Topics will range from selection and standards to maintenance and care. This should ultimately assist you in selecting fit-for-purpose safety solutions for your site. From these discussions, we will create resources such as Toolbox Talk downloads and blogs, all of which will be available on our website, www.protector.co.za for download.
Hi, I'm Rani Naidu and I'm the application engineer at 3M South Africa. And today we'll conduct an interview with Dylan Sutherland, who is our preferred partner when it comes to fall protection solutions. Dylan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Rani. Dylan, I've been in safety for probably 11 years. So prior to that, I was an estimator, had nothing to do with safety. And yeah, we had just started our journey with a company called Capital Safety, which in 2016 was acquired by 3M. And that's been my exposure, just being in the business, understanding all the different levels through working at heights, from just being the service center and supplier to their official training provider, to their preferred partner, and quite recently, one of the only partners into Africa.
Thank you for that, Dylan. And as you rightly mentioned, 3M partners with preferred suppliers on certain ranges, and Protector Safety Gear happens to be our preferred supplier when it comes to fall arrest and fall arrest systems. How would you say you would go about offering your different solutions to the end user?
So I think it's definitely not a single approach. It can't be. We need to first understand what the challenge is, because somebody that needs a harness, if the conversation is, hey guys, I need to buy a harness, there's many variables that are in that. We need to really get to the root of what are they using it for, what is their environment, what are the risks. There's a multitude of factors, but I think what we've really tried to do is position the proposal and show what the solution will do. And unfortunately, to your point, when it gets to procurement, if they are not fed the appropriate information and if they are not adequately advised, they can't make a good decision off of that. And we've really worked hard at making sure we, from the start of understanding what the solution is, all the way through to the decision makers, informing them and upskilling them and creating knowledge so that they can make the best solution or the best choice to what an adequate solution would be.
Okay, and I like, again, terminology used in terms of education. When we talk education, I always like to let people know that just because you've attended a training session on fall protection or fall arrest systems once doesn't mean that that's it. It's an ongoing process. So let's take it a step back. What would you say is a risk when dealing with fall protection?
When we talk about risk, if we're talking about the client's risk, obviously falling is a risk, but the biggest risk of making a bad choice, the choice is unfortunately lack of information. And there's two elements. One, somebody hasn't been exposed to all the options, or two, they found something that worked in a previous similar situation, but the reality is the conditions might be different or the environment might be different. And making a decision from that standpoint and not doing the appropriate legwork to make an informed decision on what does a safety solution look like, that I think is where a lot of the risk sits with clients we work with.
Okay, so we all know that different sites require different solutions. How do you overcome that? What service do you offer to make sure that you're getting the right system and solution onto the right site?
We've got a whole process that we have to go through of asking, understanding, making sure that what we are actually going to supply them is appropriate. Because our general stance in South Africa is if somebody phones and says, look, I need a harness, the people will quote them a harness and a lanyard, and that's the standard. But the reality is that doesn't help anyone. probably not going to be sufficient for their area, probably not going to look at the entire risk or dangers that they will get on site, and where we try to take it to. So that's from a phone call. We'll then try get on site. I think it's imperative. You can't decide on what a safety solution looks like without actually experiencing it and making sure that you are more than familiar with what the risks are.
Perfect. So at 3M, we've got this ABCDE and F analogy that we use. And I know now it's open. Most companies that do sell fall protection also follow these. Would you like to take us through what the ABCDs are?
Yeah, sure.
Fall risk?
So A is your anchor point. That's going to be the primary connecting point. So where if a fall does occur, that will be what takes most of the force. That'll be where the force sits once that fall has been arrested. The B is for body support. So naturally, you need to put on a harness because you need something to stop your body from moving, and that would be your harness. Your C would be a connector. There's various options when it comes to connectors, but a connector is what you would now connect your body harness, so your B, to point A, and that would make sure that in the event of a fall, the connector is what stops the harness from hitting the ground, and by doing so, the person in the harness. We get to D, we start talking about your descent and rescue. That's twofold. So descent and rescue could be either descent into confined spaces or areas where the user needs to rely on equipment holding their weight, not necessarily falling. And the other side is rescue, which again is a mechanism that we need to perform an efficient rescue. And I think it's quite important we understand the efficient side of that, but that's the D. E is education. So to your point, it's not just a one and done and you get a half an hour training session. The education has to be appropriate. People need to be trained. In South Africa, it's to unit standards. What we're trying to get right is make sure that we look a bit broader than that. I mean, with a partner like 3M, it allows us exposure to international standards, and our thought process is, well, we're setting our legislative standards, our SAN standards or SABS standards according to EN. Why would we not be linking our training to that? So that's on the education. And then the F is for fall protection for tools. Fall protection for tools, it's to make sure two things. One, I don't drop a hammer on my friend's head underneath me. But two, I don't drop a hammer and now I have to climb down 30 floors to go fetch it, and that interferes with my work. So fall protection for tools is just a full system to make sure that while working with tools while at heights, those tools don't have an ability to reach the ground.
Okay, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually noticed that at one of the sites that I visited. So again, when there's working at heights taking place, what is your opinion on the people actually conducting that working at heights task? Should they be certified in any way? Should they attend more training courses? What do you think will help them to get a better understanding of why they need to wear safety harnesses, for instance?
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in the training, and I think not just training for giving somebody a certificate. We need to be training to educate. We need to be, the reality is, and you ask me how I feel about them, I feel sad for most of them because most of them don't even realize the danger they're putting themselves in by doing that task. And I don't think they quite understand the risks, and they don't understand the implications because falls don't happen often enough. Not often enough, we don't want them to happen more, but the reality is they don't happen. So when they do happen, unfortunately, it's generally a death or serious injury, but the frequency isn't high at all, which makes people quite complacent when it comes to taking that risk as serious. So for me, we need to educate. That education needs to be aimed at making that person comfortable, making them comfortable with the concept of working at heights, making them comfortable with the equipment used, the options they have, and making sure that those options are adequate for the area. Because again, you can't just give a piece of equipment and say, well, here's your work at heights equipment, off you go. Every single site would be different. So education is a huge component to that.
Okay. And how does Protector then assist with that education? And I'm now referring to the training facility.
Awesome. So we've got a fully accredited training facility. I think it's more than that, though. So we've done all the legal stuff. We've been accredited. We go through the RWH, which is the professional body, which we strongly believe, it gives the end user a leg to stand on if anything ever gets to court. We've got the 3M International Accreditation, which is really awesome to put on your offering. But the reality is the teams that are giving that. And what we try to do is we try to make sure that our teams are experts. The person giving training, a lot of the misses from a training point, I believe, are they've got the literature, which has been certified.
Mm-hmm.
The literature says, well, we need to talk about this, you need to answer this question. Unfortunately, that's not enough. The person that's spending time with those students needs to understand various risks when it comes to working at heights, various solutions, various possible potential outcomes. Because if they can do that, and if they can appropriately communicate that with the learners, I think there's a better chance that the learners will start taking this seriously. Because if it's just a book exercise, and if somebody's standing in front of the class saying, listen, this is how you do it, this is what you do, it's very different to somebody practically putting on a harness, practically climbing, saying, look, we were at a site this time and this happened, and this is how we made sure that the user was safe. And we really try to get that right. We really try to make sure that our teams that are responsible for this training are upskilled, not classroom upskilled. That's obviously a non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. That has to happen. But practically on site. Get them on site. Get them seeing solutions. Get them seeing different types of situations, because they're also proud of it, right?
Yeah.
They're proud of, hey, cool, look at what I can do. They go home to their family and I really experienced something cool. We set up these lifelines on a roof. Not many people do that. Before we work at heights, I'd never been on a industrial roof. And by creating this sense of pride and this eagerness to learn and get better, I think it kind of rubs off on the students, because they're sharing their experiences.
100%. So I'll tell you a little thing that I discovered about myself is that I do abseiling. So I never thought I had a fear of heights. But in abseiling, you're facing the rock face and you're climbing. Or you're getting down, but you're facing the rock face. And the very first time I had to go onto a smokestack, which is like 300 meters high, I was terrified. I couldn't walk to the edge. So I do believe what you say right now in terms of having the practical experience is important, because it was only then that I realized I had a fear of heights, because I was facing, the descent, the drop, not away from it. So I think that's something that could be highlighted when they do come through for the training. So as part of the training, how long would you say a person needs to have practical experience?
If I can just add on to your point before, because I think it's a vital point from a training element. If you look at general training, work at heights, you walk into a training area, they've got a scaffold. The guys climb up a scaffold, down a scaffold. The reality is at work, it's very different.
True.
What you're talking about now, abseiling, it's a very, controlled, because you probably have an anchor point higher than you, but two, not real, because you're not looking at the risk like when you were on the smokestack.
100%.
Now, we've also tried to do that from our training facility, and that's actually what got us accredited with 3M. The training facility we've created it's twofold. It's one, controlled. It has to be in a controlled environment, because we've got people that maybe have no experience working at heights. But two, it's also it's got alternate means of access. It's got different types of situations you can simulate. So we're trying to create this simulation. I mean, we've just built a roof. Most fall protection incidents right now happen where people walk on a roof and fall through a skylight. The reality is, who's teaching them that? Who is telling them that, guys, unless they've spoken to somebody that has experienced this before or has heard of this, chances are that the training discussion doesn't happen. So we've just built the structure, and what it's to do is to walk them through working on a roof in a controlled environment, in a safe environment, with the big highlight saying, you see this here, this polycarb sheet? Don't stand on that. You will die. And that's quite important, and I think it's a really keen aspect that's been missed. As to how long should somebody have experience, look, the reality is most people working at heights aren't doing work at heights because they want to. If you think of the mines, if you think of manufacturing, engineering, people are working at heights due to circumstance of the task that they need to perform, their function, by some means being at heights. So we can talk about Boilermakers on a mine. The Boilermaker on the mine is there to go and fix valves or whatever their function is. Most of the time that's on the ground. But every so often it might be up at heights, and now they need to do training to make sure that they can do that function, that same function, safely. So I don't think there's necessarily they need to have done work at heights or been exposed to work at heights. Prior to any work at heights being done, they need to have trained. They need to have gone through the course. There's a unit standard in South Africa. We're quite lucky. At the moment, we've got a unit standard, so they need to have achieved that. They need to have been deemed competent, and that will give them the general ability to, if done appropriately, if done correctly, select the right equipment, select the right anchor points, make the right decisions when they need to work at heights.
Perfect. And is there any misinformation that you're aware of that happens on sites?
Sure.
I'm sure there's plenty.
There are. I think it's more a matter of which one is the biggest. I mean, look, from a training point, there's a huge miss. The reality is, again, the team I talk about that performs training, they make me proud on a daily basis just because of how involved they are. You then look at obviously people are in business, they want to make money, and some people do it wrong. Some people just want to make money. They don't have a bigger cause or a bigger objective. And there you will get people that themselves have no experience, themselves have never put on a harness, teaching and training, but at the end of the day, that company might have got all the right paperwork in place and been able to give somebody a certificate to say they're safe to work at heights. So I think that's the biggest miss. Not really a myth. I think it's just more that people don't really know about how to make sure that training is appropriately received.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've noticed is that people don't understand that serious injuries don't only result from how high. Anything at height can be a risk. So the tendency is, it's just a small job, it's not that high, I'll skip putting on because it's going to take too much time, it's too cumbersome. So there are misconceptions out there that we need to try and educate people around to help them be safer.
The reality is exactly that. Misconception from a danger of fall is definitely the higher you are, the more dangerous. The reality is the higher you are, the safer you are, because I can bet when you're on that smokestack, you were holding on for dear life.
Yes, I was.
As soon as you can see that risk and understand the risk, and you get, listen, there's no way I'm going to be safe, you're going to be a lot more cautious and a lot more thoughtful of what you do. The problem is anything from just off the ground can hurt you. I mean, I'm an avid soccer supporter, and the same for any rugby supporter. If you ever see somebody jump and try either header a ball in soccer or catch a ball in rugby, and somebody takes that person's legs out, I can guarantee you everybody watching that screen cringes as that person hits the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they're superhuman people. I get that. They're really athletic, but they're not jumping more than 2 meters up.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably half a meter off the ground. And we cringe at that. And again, it's these superhuman athletic people that are getting seriously damaged. And it's not because of the height. The reality is, when you're ready, the human body is phenomenal. When you're ready for that impact, or when you can take that impact, your body can act like a shock absorber. And you can jump and you can land, and the way your legs work will dissipate the forces to make sure it doesn't hurt you. The problem isn't that. It's not when you're ready. The problem is, you mentioned it just now. This job will take 2 minutes. I'm going to do it quickly. Whoops, there goes the step ladder, or accidentally trip over something. And that's where the damage happens, because the person isn't ready to take that impact. And ultimately, when your body stops moving at quite a serious speed, there's going to be serious damage caused to it.
So talking about like accidents that happen where you're not anticipating it, even if you are anticipating a fall, so you've got a nice harness on and you've got it secured, people also don't understand that there's trauma related to that. If you have a harness that is ill-fitting, or if it feels comfortable but not correctly fitted, there is trauma attached to a fall. Can you explain a bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So we've got something that we call harness trauma or suspension trauma. Essentially what happens is your blood flow stops. So if you fall, or if you land in a harness and it stops you from hitting the ground, it's done its job. It made sure you didn't hurt yourself or die. The problem is, as soon as that happens, it immediately turns into the worst thing you can be in. Because it keeps you in an upright position, what happens is all of the blood in your body starts flowing down your body into your legs, and it begins pooling in your legs. When that blood sits in your legs, the problem is, one, there's a lack of circulation. And the easiest way for me to remember it is, I mean, in the UK, they used to do those parades, those massive parades with the armies, and you'd see these people standing at attention, and next thing, somebody just faints and they fall down. That's your body's natural way of protecting you, because what happened there was the exact same thing. The blood moved from their brain, their heart, into their legs, but your body said, hold on, this isn't good for anybody. I'm going to be in a bad position. And it forced you to faint. And by fainting, you are now horizontal. By being horizontal, it's much easier for the blood to flow through your body again, back to your brain, and make sure that it's appropriately aerating and making your blood full of oxygen and feeding that through your body. The problem in a fall is you get caught in this harness and you can't. Your body tries to faint. And when you faint, you just stay in an upright position, meaning, one, you've got an increase in blood pressure because your body's trying to make sure that the blood flows through your body to get back to your brain and your heart. Two, in that upright position, you faint and you don't go horizontal to allow that to happen. So the blood in your legs that has now pooled becomes toxic. It's got a lack of oxygen, and the problem is that once you are brought down, if they release that blood, and if they release it too quickly, that blood will shoot through and hit your heart. And that's generally how people can die when it comes to suspension trauma.
Perfect. Because that leads me on to my next question with regards to rescue. So that's another thing I've noticed when doing site assessments, is that there's an assessment done for the risk. But then what about the retrieval? What happens then when that accident does occur? What is the standard operating procedure? And in most instances, they don't have one. They rely on the rescue team to just have one ready.
And figure it out, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we've got quite a cool way of working through that at our facility. When we get told, no, we'll use muscle, we'll lift the person. Cool. We've got a 70 kilogram dummy. Mm-hmm. We let that guy lie down there, and we get the men and women that are in the training to come lift it. And I promise you, the look on their face when they realize that, hold on, this is just 70 kilograms. But one, it's a dead weight. Two, it's in an awkward position because it's generally going to be below you. And I think that opens up, but it's too late. You're spot on. It's too late to be considering that when we're doing a training or after somebody's fallen, because that's usually how it works. Mm-hmm. So right before any work is done in South Africa, actually what should happen is there should be a fall protection plan. Before anybody gets trained, before any equipment's procured, there should be a fall protection plan. That legally is the right avenue. The fall protection plan per construction regulations 10 talks about all the considerations we need. It talks about the risk assessment. It talks about the rescue. It talks about the maintenance. It talks about training. And that gives you a really, really good base to start from. But we must make sure that we engage with industry knowledgeable people, because if you're talking about lifting a human versus lifting material, it's different.
Very much so.
It's a completely different thing, and often there's a mix-up between LMRs and lifting and work at heights, both ways. So just like I can't do anything for lifting, I understand the principles, I understand the equipment used. I can never engage with somebody on a lifting side of things because I'm not a specialist at that. But for the last 10 years, we've been learning and understanding and developing this fall protection side of things. That's a very different conversation. And what I would suggest is when people look at that construction regulation and they start considering to work at heights, they go through that step by step and they engage with people that this is their job, because this is all we do.
Because there are rescue equipment available. So again, it needs to be part of a standard operating procedure for your fall arrest team to be aware of.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope this episode added value to you. If you are experiencing any safety challenges on your sites and require any additional information, please do leave us a message on LinkedIn via Protector Safety Gears page, or alternatively follow the link below and share a message with us, because maybe it can create value or valuable conversation for future episodes. Be sure to also follow us on LinkedIn. There will be some valuable information shared from today's discussion.